I took the opportunity to talk to a workers' comp lawyer, and I wanted to share some of what he had to say because he does know about the trucking industry, and he's based in Tennessee, where some of the big trucking carriers are located, some of the ones that train students, and some of the ones that have a lot of workers' comp claims. I want you to remember something. The company is always going to look out for the company. That's why you need to look out for yourself. I do understand how there's trickery, where sometimes a carrier misleads the driver and tells them, oh no, you don't have to fill that out, or oh no, this isn't going to be covered. You call up your own insurance company. No. If you feel like you're getting misled, if you feel like you're getting jerked around, you should get a lawyer. Generally, from my understanding, your workers' compensation is where your employment is consummated. That is really important for truck drivers because a lot of times you are employed by a carrier in one state, you live in another state, and you might have been injured in a third state. So what are you supposed to do? Now, what if the carrier is got their home office in one state, but you were hired at an orientation center at another state? That's where it was consummated, right? Well, not unless they made you sign a waiver that you weren't paying attention to in orientation, and now you go under the laws of that other state. So these are things that you need to know. I put this in the slides of this video. There is a workers' compensation website where you can find out the state laws. It goes by the state laws. So that is important. A lot of times when we're truck drivers, we go to facilities where we'll see something like, we have 475 days accident free, and we're going to have a big steak barbecue for everyone when we get to 500. So stay safe, be safe. And it's really funny because we do work in an industry where just about anything can happen to you. People die and they get hurt often. And there's really no guidance for truck drivers, especially in orientation, to show you simple things to prevent you from injuring yourself, like cutting your hand open, pulling a seal on the back of the truck, the thin metal one, or having the door fly open and pulling your arm out of the socket. There's so many things the carriers could do to educate you so that you wouldn't have one of these injuries, but they don't. And when we go to these other warehouses and I see these incentive programs, these bonus programs, that's because those are companies that care about keeping their workers' comp costs down. We don't really have that, and there is a lot of trickery to mislead the drivers sometimes, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to do this video.
I'm with Jeff Ruffalo of Summers and Wyatt.
I handle basically two types of law. I handle workers' compensation cases in the state of Tennessee, and then I handle what I would call personal injury cases or tort claims, car accidents, slip and falls, cases in which you're entitled to a jury trial as opposed to workers' comp cases, which are judge-only cases.
And I met you because I was employed here in Tennessee, and you are familiar with the trucking industry, and you have handled other driver cases.
I've handled a number of workers' compensation cases for employees, truckers of the two major employers in the Chattanooga, Tennessee area, yes.
It is unique for drivers because, as you all know, we often live in a different state where our injury may have occurred or where the carrier is located. So you probably see quite a lot of that. I often hear drivers be confused, what am I supposed to do? I got injured in one state and I don't know what to do next.
Yeah, you know, that it is. It's very unique to represent truckers because obviously if somebody works for a company and they live in town, their company's in town, they're going to get treated in town, and there's not going to be a major interruption of their lifestyle. But if you're a trucker and you live really out of your truck, but your home base may be, for instance, Florida, but you're over the road and you're involved in an accident in Utah, but you work for a Tennessee corporation, what happens is, under Tennessee law, if you're injured in a state, whether let's call it Utah, and you need immediate emergent care, then you're entitled to go, obviously, by ambulance or to the hospital to get checked out. The question becomes, if you need follow-up care, where do you get that care? Do you get it in Utah, where you have no belongings or any kind of relationship with that state? Do you come back to Tennessee, or do you go to your home state, in my example, Florida? And obviously employers, have different philosophies on that. The major trucking companies in the state of Tennessee, or at least the two major corporations in Chattanooga, like for you to come to Chattanooga and get your medical treatment for a number of reasons, but probably the most important reason is familiarity. They know the doctors that you're treating with. They want to cut down on lost time. So if the doctor says you can't go back to driving a truck, but you can work light duty, the companies will allow you to come work in office and try to cut down on their lost time. Now, there's some benefits that you're entitled to, and we may talk about that in a moment, but there are some benefits that you're entitled to under the workers' comp system, whether you're out of work completely, which would be temporary total disability, or you are able to go back to work but not in a full-time capacity, making what you were making before your injury. In that case, what we would talk about is temporary partial disability.
It gets a little confusing for the drivers too, where there's a report, I think it's called the first
Report of Injury?
First report of injury. So there's not a whole lot of guidance for them, like, okay, they hurt themselves, what are they supposed to do?
The state has its own set of workers' compensation laws. So what I'm saying is unique to Tennessee. Now, it may or may not be true for an injured employee in Michigan. But in Tennessee, the law says if you're injured on the job, you have an absolute duty to report your injury immediately. Now, we've interpreted the word immediately to mean at least within 30 days. You have to give notice to your employer that you've been injured and that the injury occurred on the job. To walk up to your employer one day and say, my shoulder hurts, does not give the required notice under Tennessee law. You have to say, my shoulder hurts because I was lifting up that box that I was moving on my job, and I think I pulled something in my shoulder. So you have to be pretty specific and give the employer notice within 30 days that you were injured and that the injury occurred on the job.
Sometimes I hear drivers say, well, they got me on light duty, they're only paying me this much money, which is not what my pay was at when I was driving, and that's all I'm getting. But you're saying under workman's comp, it should be 2/3, is that?
Yeah, the best way to explain it is this. If you're injured on the job, what we do in Tennessee is we look at your average weekly wage in the 52 weeks from the date of your injury backwards. So if you're injured today, we would look at from January 24, 2010 through January 24, 2011. What was your total earnings? We then take your average weekly wage. If your average weekly wage is, for instance, $900, and you are unable to work at all in any capacity, you're entitled to temporary benefits. What we call that would be temporary total disability. You'd get 2/3 of your average weekly wage. So in my example, you'd get $600 in temporary total disability benefits. Those benefits would continue until you were able to return to work full-time, or you've been released by the doctor who's treating you at what we call maximum medical improvement. Let's say the person, again, was earning $900 before their injury. The doctor says he cannot go back to driving a truck, but he can do light-duty work. The company wants to cut down on their out-of-work injuries, so they take him back to work and they put him in the office. But in the office, they're only able to pay him, let's say, $600. That's a difference of $300 in what he was making before his injury and what he's making today in light-duty capacity. In that scenario, you get your $600 check from the employer, but then you're entitled to what's called temporary, not total disability, but temporary partial disability. And you get the difference between $900, your salary before the injury, and $600, which is what you're making now. You get 2/3 of the difference. So in my example, you're losing $300 a week. You would get 2/3 of that, or $200 a week, in temporary partial disability under the workers' comp system from the workers' compensation insurance company.
Now, if you're working for a carrier and they are not doing that and you don't have counsel at that point, because there are a lot of drivers, they say, I'm going to be able to navigate the workman's comp system by myself, and they don't want a lawyer because they don't trust lawyers.
Right.
And I've heard a lot of drivers, they don't know where to begin to find a lawyer, or they've got a lawyer that's not really communicating with them or treating them well, and that's why I wanted to interview you, because you've communicated with me very well and kept me very educated on what's going on, and you know trucking. So if a driver was at that crossroads and they said, you know what, they're not doing me like they're doing some of the other people,
Yeah, knowledge is power. Knowing your benefits, knowing your rights, knowing what you're entitled to, sometimes as easy as letting the insurance company or letting the employer, your rights. And if they're only giving you, you've been injured, you've hurt your knee, and you need to see an orthopedic surgeon, and they say, we've set you up an appointment with Dr. X tomorrow, well, you let them know that you know what your rights are, and your rights are that you're entitled to a list of 3 orthopedic surgeons, and you get to choose one from that list. And you just say, it's sometimes it's simple, you don't have to get a lawyer. You say, I know what my rights are, I know I'm entitled to 3 doctors, and I get to choose one of those 3. In your example, where they're not paying the difference in the salary, you just hopefully can say, I know what my rights are. I know that I'm only making less money now. In my example, I'm making $600 a week now. I was making $900. I know that I'm entitled to temporary partial disability under the workers' comp system, and I know I'm entitled to that. Who do I need to speak to get those benefits started? So sometimes, if you have the knowledge, you don't need to get an attorney.
Okay.